Hi everyone, I'm Mary,
I'm Aubrey.
and we're product designers here at Crema. And we have gotten to collaborate on quite a few Webflow projects together. And as you may know, Webflow is a tool that's really built for one designer to work in. So we're going to share a little bit of how we collaborated and built websites together in Webflow.
So, working at a digital product agency, we spend most of our time working in apps. So, we don't do a lot usually on the website side of things. But occasionally we do get a project where we're interested in building a website for some of our clients. And so Mary and I have had the opportunity to collaborate together on a few of those projects. And so that's kind of where our experience comes from, is figuring out how to build websites at a place where it's not really our bread and butter. And so we've had a lot of experience and tried a lot of different things that have kind of led to us coming up with a system that works really well for a pair of designers building a website together in Webflow.
I would also add that on these engagements, usually it's just Aubrey and myself and then a product manager. So we're not working with developers or content writers or anyone else. It's just the two of us and a product manager who are putting these together. So it is really gratifying to see the process of us getting to design a website and build it together just as product designers. So at Crema, we also don't necessarily work together on projects with another designer. We're leaning more into that and starting to collaborate on design quite a bit more than we used to. But for me, collaborating on a design project was very, very new. Aubrey is probably my first product designer at Crema that I got to work with one-on-one. And it's a really interesting process because as designers, we can sometimes be really protective of our work, and it becomes our little baby, and we really kind of coddle it and create it. And I like to sometimes hide my work in progress, and working with another designer really forces you to be more transparent about your process, work through things together rather than hide away and kind of design something and then bring it up when you're ready to. But I found that working with Aubrey in particular has been a complete dream. I feel like I've learned so much from you, Aubrey. You are a very different kind of designer than I am, and I think we've learned that our strengths are very compatible, and we've kind of pushed each other into certain areas with how we engage the client, how we actually do the design piece, and how we build together. And it's been really amazing to have a designer to lean on and get feedback from, and just have you there during the whole process. And now I don't ever want to design by myself again. Like, I really love collaborating. I think I'm spoiled though, because I love working with you so much.
It's always an interesting experience working with someone new for the first time. And so I collaborated on projects here and there, but to fully design something together with someone in Webflow, when we hadn't had a ton of time to collaborate before, it was how is this going to work out? And I think it's one of those things where our styles of work were really complementary to each other, which is what has led us to be able to kind of figure out the system that works really well for us. And so I think when you are collaborating with someone, generally you have to have like compatible styles, but especially in Webflow, because you're literally working off of each other's systems. So you have to figure out how to work together cohesively. And then beyond that, you can't be designing in Webflow at the same time as another designer. So you have to be able to coordinate schedules and kind of, be flexible and work off of one another, and really be good at communicating with where you're at, what's happening, how you're building things. Having this like open flow of communication is so important to being able to have a positive and successful collaboration relationship when it comes to Webflow.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that Mary and I have done in the past is that I was focused more on we've kind of done it in different ways in different projects. The first project we worked together was a website that really had two sides. And so I focused on one side of the website, and that was kind of my bread and butter. And then Mary focused on the other side of the website. And so while they were kind of it was almost two websites in one. And so while they needed to be cohesive, it was almost like we were both working on our own mini projects that came out of the same system. So that worked really well for one of our projects. Whereas on the most recent project that we worked on, it wasn't so much, it was one website and it had a whole bunch of pieces, and it's a really complicated infrastructure. And so what we decided to do was have it so I was focused more on the design. And so I was designing the components and putting the pages together in Figma. And Mary was then taking the stuff that I was putting together and she was building it in Webflow and creating a system in Webflow to make it really easily repeatable and buildable as we move forward. And so she was kind of, and that's how we started. And then as we got further into the project, we were less in design and more in Webflow. And now we worked into sharing responsibilities. But so it's not to say that there is one system that works better than another system for dividing up responsibilities, but figuring out for this project what's the best way to break things up and how we define our roles so we know who's in charge of what and there's no confusion there. I think it's really important to have a relationship of trust where you can say, I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm stuck on something, or like I'm frustrated by a situation. Let's just jump on a call and talk it through. Having someone that is not only a partner in design, but like a sounding board to help you talk through things is so needed in I think all types of design projects, but it's something that we really leaned into with Webflow projects just because of the collaborative nature and the frustrations that come from it that don't necessarily come from our everyday work styles.
It kind of reminds me of how a lot of developers work at Crema. They're a very collaborative team. And there's always more than one developer on a project at Crema. And so they do paired development all the time. They hop on a call together, share their screen, and talk through problems. And we don't really do paired design at Crema, but it's something that we've found really valuable to be able to look at our screen together, talk through problems. I feel like Webflow is this kind of weird mixture of design and development in terms of like how we're problem solving. So it feels a bit easier to create that like pair design process, but it's something I want to bring into the rest of my design projects at Crema because I really loved that piece of working with you. Getting stuck in an area, whether it's in the Figma file or in Webflow, getting stuck when I'm by myself, it results in just spinning my wheels and getting frustrated and kind of like losing it or setting it aside and coming back to it later. But sometimes it can be a waste of time. And so it's really nice to be able to just hop on a call, express frustration, sometimes just hand it off to you. And sometimes, some sort of resource that I don't know about. But it was just so good to have someone to just like talk things through.
So when it comes to the actual application of what this looks like, the nitty-gritty of Webflow, how we actually make this work, a lot of it revolves around scheduling. I think the new capabilities that Webflow has allowed, you can have multiple people in the designer, but only one person can be designing. So you can have people working in the designer for content. Some people like that better. Personally, I do. So you can have multiple people in there, but only one person designing. So now you can like kick someone out and like bump each other out or say no. But it does allow for better collaboration. It wasn't originally that one way when we started working, but you still do have to schedule like who's going to be in there physically building, physically designing at the right time. Mary and I would coordinate our schedules every single week. The way it works at Crema is we kind of sell portions of our time. And so we were each 50% dedicated, which means that one of us had to be in Webflow or working on the project in some format pretty much all the time. And so because of the fact that we couldn't be in there at the same time, we really had to do a good job of scheduling. So we would each pick the times that we needed to be in there. Mary and I are in different time zones. So that kind of helps sometimes where she could start working a little bit earlier, maybe I would work a little bit later. And so we would kind of figure out who should be working when, really lay out our schedules well, and then, communicate when one of us was getting off, getting back on. And so I think that was one of those like really important elements of how did we actually do this is just like really thorough scheduling and sticking to the schedule and communicating as things changed.
There were times where it was frustrating because I would want to make one tiny change and I knew that you were scheduled to be in there and I just wanted to get it done and not have to think about it. But for the most part, I think that the scheduling process worked really, really well. And it just made us kind of be on top of things as well. Like we knew exactly what we needed to get done when. There weren't a lot of unknowns or just kind of like extra time that you could just like mess around in Webflow. It definitely was productive time, very focused time.
I think one other thing that we've learned along the way that I think is really important is scheduling and preparing to be done earlier than you think you need to be, because things in Webflow do just take time. Things will come up. So even if like you're very detailed and attentive, there will just be things you haven't thought of. Like we build very large websites in Webflow. And so there are complexities that are just bound to come up. And so not only scheduling your time, but scheduling ahead of time, right? And making sure you have a plan of action and staying on it or ahead of it, right? As soon as you start falling behind, like you have to be also communicative of that. That was one of the biggest lessons I think we had with our first project, was just that you really have to stay on top of things and stay ahead of things.
And build in time for QA process as well. We had, hoped for that and built it in, but then as Aubrey said, things come up and you realize that a feature is a lot more complex. But I would say that a QA process is something that should never be let go of and should be extremely held extremely fast to, because without that, the publish process is terrifying. It is not, it's very uncomfortable to feel like you're publishing something that you're not 100% sure of yet.
If you're going to build things based off components and build a component system in Figma, and then you're going to build that in Webflow, building a components page in Webflow, like build a system in Webflow that is reflective of how you would build in Figma. Clients after we're gone are going to need to add to things. They're going to need to be able to build on things. Giving them a system to build from also gives you a system to build from. So if you start from the beginning of, I'm going to go through and I'm going to build all these different components, I'm going to lay everything out, I'm going to make all the components responsive, go through and make everything responsive at the same time, go ahead and animate all of those at the same time, then all it really is a matter of going through, dragging and dropping, adding content, and then doing the custom things you need to do here and there. But then it allows you to kind of really stick to a set system that is consistent all the way through and easy to build on in the future for your client. So it's not something they have to come back to you for whenever they need to add to something. They just already have the system laid out for them.
Yeah, that also helped a lot with working together. The fact that, each of us would build different parts of the system, but it was very clear what was going on. And because it was built in a systematic way, there's consistency across the entire site. Even when we were both working in a separate half of the website, there was still a system about the theme and components, and that kept things really consistent across the whole website. And without that, I think we would have lost a lot of consistency and a lot of kind of design system, basically.
Again, that's the biggest thing, is just like the person you're going to build things in Webflow with.
Yeah.
So if you enjoyed our video, make sure to like below and subscribe. And if you have any comments for tips and tricks for collaboration in Webflow, make sure to leave them down below, and we'll see you next time.